How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be continuing the How Good Is Your Overwatch League Team series by talking about the NYXL. For those of you who are new around here and don't quite know how this series works, basically in each episode I pick a different Overwatch League team, then I analyze said team's talent in order to make a prediction as to where I think they're going to finish in the Overwatch League Season 2 standings. I like to start these videos off by talking a little bit about the head coach before we dive into the players, so let's start things off by talking about the NYXL's coach. The head coach of the New York Excelsior will be Pavane, and yes, I know it's kind of sad for NYXL fans because they lost a genius of a coach in Wizard Young, but Pavane knows what he's doing too. He's been here for a long time. He was part of the NYXL coaching staff last year, he was part of the LW Blue coaching staff, and fun fact, if you didn't know this, he was the head coach of the 2018 South Korean World Cup team. Needless to say, this guy has a lot of coaching experience, and there's really no reason to worry about him being the head coach of this team. I think he's going to do just fine. He may be a slight downgrade compared to Wizard Young, but he'll still get the job done, I guarantee you. That's pretty much everything I have to say about the NYXL's head coach, so now let's move on to the players, and starting off at main tank, we have Mano. This guy is widely regarded as one of the best main tanks in the entire league. I don't have him in my top 3 or anything like that, but he without a doubt is a top 5 main tank in the Overwatch League in my opinion. His Winston and Reinhardt are about as good as you can possibly get. Also, I think it's worth mentioning that I believe Mano is one of the smartest players on his entire team. I mean, this dude makes so many big brain plays. I can't even keep up with him. It's absolutely insane. I'm pretty sure that in Stage 1, Mano's really going to benefit from the meta. I think that having to play a lot of Reinhardt will be good for him because I think that he is one of the better Reins out there, and a lot of the other pro players seem to think the same way. I'm super excited to watch Mano on stage this year, and I already know he's going to have a great Overwatch League Season 2. On off tank, the NYXL are sticking with Meko, and I'm sure that this comes as a surprise to nobody. The dude is just a beast, and if you want a consistent off tank player on your team, then Meko is your guy. He will always pop off on Diva or Zarya, Roadhog. It doesn't really matter what he's playing. You know he's going to show up. He's an absolute monster. And believe it or not, but there actually aren't any other tanks on this team. It's just Mano and Meko, so now let's move on to their supports. At main support, the NYXL have, in my opinion, the 2 best players at that position in the entire Overwatch League. Of course, I'm talking about Arc and Animo. I know there are plenty of people out there who without a doubt think Arc is the best main support in the entire Overwatch League, but Animo is a god in his own right too, and I really think that the gap is very close, if there even is one at all. Just look at how he performed during Season 1 and in the 2018 World Cup. He very rarely had a bad game, and that's why it's tough for me to pick between him and Arc. They're both just so good at what they do. Their Lucio, Ana, and Mercy play is just incredible. I've never seen anything like it. They had the 2 least amount of deaths per game in Overwatch League Season 1 on Mercy. These dudes just don't know how to die, and they put out a bunch of healing every single game. Whether the NYXL decide to split playtime between these 2 guys, or maybe they lean more towards Arc or Animo, I think it's safe to say they're in good shape at the main support position. On flex support is Jonek, and what is there to say that already hasn't been said about this man? He is the best flex support in the entire Overwatch League, and in the world, in my opinion, for that matter. His Zenyatta and his Ana are just ridiculous. Obviously, his Zen is arguably the best ever. Like, we've never seen anything like it before in the entire history of this game, but his Ana is no joke either, and that's actually the hero that put him on the map to begin with. He's the reigning MVP of the Overwatch League, and he won the 2018 World Cup MVP as well. We already know what this guy is capable of, so it's no surprise that he already has all of these accolades under his belt. The last thing I wanted to say about Jonek before we move on is that I personally believe he is the best player on the New York Excelsior. And yes, I know there are a lot of really good players on this team, but I think Jonek takes it. I don't think that New York has as much success as they do in Season 1 without Jonek. He was clearly the backbone of this team, and he pretty much served as a 3rd DPS player since he was basically doing like 10,000 damage every single game. Anyway, those are actually the only support players the NYXL have on their roster, so now let's move on to DPS. And oh man, do the NYXL have a lot of players at this position. I suppose I'll start off by talking about their true hit scan players. So first up is the big boss himself, Pine. And yes, I know that technically Pine is listed as a DPS/flex player, but let's just be honest about it. He mostly plays played Widowmaker and McCree, also a little bit of Tracer here and there for the NYXL in Season 1. I know he played some Genji, some Junkrat, Pharah, and Zarya here and there, but he was mostly on Widowmaker when he was in the game. And I'd just like to add on that he is god tier at Widow and McCree. He's arguably the best at both of those heroes. Maybe you could say Carpe's a little bit better, but it's extremely close. I mean, I go back and forth about it all the time. Let me know who you think is better in the comment section. Is Carpe the better hit scan player, or is it Pine? Anyway though, if you need someone to make an explosive play for your team, especially when you're in a big time of need, then Pine is your guy, right? He seemed to do it a lot for the NYXL in Season 1, and I expect to see more of the same coming into Season 2. The next hit scan DPS player I wanted to bring up is Sabiobi, aka the best Tracer in the world, although some people may say differently. Other people might argue it's Striker or Prophet. Depends on who you're talking to, I guess, but I personally think Sabiobi is the best Tracer player out there. Also, his Widowmaker and McCree aren't too far off. I don't think he falls into god tier on those two heroes, but he's still very solid nonetheless. I do have one concern about Sabiobi, however, and that is the depth of his hero pool. I really thought that his lack of versatility got exposed during Stage 4 in the playoffs, because it was painfully clear that he could not flex onto Hanzo or Brigitte and do very well on those heroes. Both of these heroes had a large involvement in the meta at the time, so the fact that Sabiobi struggled to play both of them is a big problem. Because GOATS is probably going to be the most relevant comp in Stage 1 of Overwatch League Season 2, I really doubt we'll see a lot of Sabiobi until the meta changes and we get to see more Tracer and Widowmaker and some of the other heroes that he's actually good at. The final player who appears to fall under the hit scan role is Nene, who is one of the newest recruitments to the NYXL. He comes from the XL2 Academy, and honestly, I don't know too much about this guy. I watched him play in the NYXL versus Philly Fusion show match, and he appears to be a capable player. Now, obviously, I really didn't get to see him play much of what he's known for since GOATS is meta and everything, but he showed that he's a pretty decent Zarya player, and that's not a bad thing. It's always good to have a lot of versatility under your belt. I'm not going to guarantee anything, but I think there's a possibility we could see him be one of the main Zarya players on this team. But at the same time, he could also just be a bench rider and not get much play time at all. I'm really not sure what his role is going to be on this team, so I guess we're just going to have to stay tuned to find out. Moving on to the flex DPS players, I want to start things off by talking about Libero, and I like him a lot. I think that he is a very, very good player, but it was clear by the end of Stage 3 that he was starting to go into a bit of a slump, and I don't think he's gotten over it yet. I think that's very apparent by the fact that he got benched in the 2018 World Cup in favor of Fleta. I think that he'll probably get over the slump and get more into rhythm by the time Stage 1 of Overwatch League Season 2 starts, but nothing is guaranteed. It's kind of unfortunate to say that, but I don't know if he'll ever be able to regain that form he had during Stage 2 when he was one of the best DPS players in the entire league. While I do have some concerns about Libero, I do think that the potential is still there with him, and his skill and his versatility are undeniable. He can play both projectile and hit scan at a fairly high level. He's mostly known for his Genji, Pharah, and Junkrat, but he can also flex onto McCree, Tracer, Widowmaker, Sombra, Soldier 76. He can pretty much play anything. If Libero is able to regain his top form from Stage 2, then the NYXL are going to be super dangerous. The second flex DPS player on this team, and the final player to round out the whole roster, is Flower. And yes, I know he kind of went into a slump on the NYXL2 Academy team. He didn't play all too well, but kind of like with a lot of the other players on this team, he has a boatload of potential. He arguably has the most potential on this entire team. It doesn't take much to remember how good Flower really is. All you have to do is look at some clips of him in the 2017 World Cup, and your memory will be jogged. He is an incredibly talented player, and kind of like with Libero, he can play just about anything. I really do think that Flower is exactly what the NYXL needed. I think that they were lacking a second versatile DPS player. They had Libero, which was great, but Sabiobi and Pine, like I mentioned before, they can mostly only play like 3 or 4 heroes at most. That's all they're really good at. So now you have 2 people that can flex onto just about anything, which means that there really aren't any limits as to what comps you can end up running in-game. For those of you who are concerned about Flower potentially not performing well in the Overwatch League, I'd say there really isn't much reason to worry about this guy at all. He's surrounded by top-of-the-line coaching. Also, a lot of the teammates he has are very talented and should be able to help him progress even further. And that's what the New York Excelsior are looking like coming into Overwatch League Season 2. I'd say that this team got better over the offseason, which is kind of crazy to think about because they finished with the best record in the entire league in Season 1, and it really wasn't even close. And now they added even more talent to their team with guys like Flower and Nene. With that being said though, my expectations for this team are very high. They look so good on paper, and if they underperform, it's going to be a real disappointment. If I were to make a prediction as to where I think the NYXL will finish in the overall standings in Season 2, I'd say anywhere from 4th to 1st place is pretty realistic for them. I'd say that every player on this team, maybe with the exception of Nene, is playing with a huge chip on their shoulder. Everyone on the NYXL team from last year is playing with a chip on their shoulder because of the fact that they got labeled as chokers after suffering an embarrassing defeat to the Philly Fusion in the semifinals of the playoffs. And Flower has a chip on his shoulder because all of his haters are saying he's not good enough after slumping in contenders, and honestly, I think all of this is going to result in just more motivation for this team to dominate the competition. This team has a lot of strengths and very few weaknesses to exploit, so because of this, I believe the NYXL will be one of the best teams in the entire league, and they most certainly will be one of the most dangerous as well. And that pretty much wraps everything up here, ladies and gentlemen. That's how good I think the New York Excelsior will be in Overwatch League Season 2. So if you enjoyed this content, make sure to hit that like button, and if you're new around here, consider subscribing and clicking the bell icon so you don't miss my next Overwatch League discussion video. I'm doing an entire series based off of this How Good Is Your Overwatch League team thing, so stay tuned for the next episode. Also, feel free to let me know what you think of the NYXL down in the comment section. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, this is ATP signing out. Peace.